When my sister-in-law moved into my house, I thought I was saving her. I never imagined I was opening the door to my own undoing. It's strange, the way betrayal creeps in, not like a storm, loud and wild, but like a slow leak under the floorboards, quiet, patient, and devastating. I remember the day she arrived, suitcase in hand, eyes red from crying. I remember the way her perfume lingered in the hallway, sweet and sharp, mixing with the scent of my mother's old rosewater lotion. I remember thinking, this is what family does. We take care of each other even when it's hard. My name is Lila. I'm the oldest daughter of a woman who believed in second chances and the only child left in the house after my mother passed. My brother, Marcus, lives 2 states away, busy with his own family, and my father, well, he's been gone a long time now. It was just me and the echo of my mother's voice in the kitchen, the ticking of the old clock she loved, and the soft creak of the floorboards at night. When my sister-in-law, Tasha, called me that rainy Thursday, I was making tea. The kettle whistled, sharp and insistent, as I pressed the phone to my ear. Her voice was small, almost childlike, and I could hear the tears she was trying to swallow. Elila, I don't know where else to go. Marcus and we're not talking. I just need a place to stay, just for a little while. I didn't hesitate. That's the thing about family. You don't ask questions when someone's drowning. You just reach out your hand. By the time she arrived, the rain had stopped, but the air was heavy with the promise of more. She stood on my porch, shivering, her hair plastered to her cheeks. I wrapped her in my mother's old shawl, the one with the faded blue flowers, and led her inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the one with the chipped edge and the faint coffee ring that never quite came out. I poured her tea, watched her hands tremble as she lifted the cup. She didn't say much that first night, just stared at the steam rising from her mug, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. I made up the guest room, fluffed the pillows, and left a little chocolate on the nightstand. My mother always said it was the small kindnesses that mattered most. And that night, as I lay in bed, I listened to the house settle around us. The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I thought about my mother, about the way she used to hum as she folded laundry, about the will she'd left behind, simple, straightforward, everything divided between Marcus and me. I thought about the way Tasha's eyes had darted around the house, lingering on the family photos. And the silver candlesticks, the old jewellery box on my dresser. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, just grief. But even then, something in me was unsettled. Before Tasha moved in, my days followed a gentle rhythm. I worked from home, editing manuscripts for a small publishing house. My office was the sunroom where the light spilled in golden and warm, and the air always smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets my mother tucked into every drawer. Mornings were quiet. I'd wake early, make coffee, and sit on the back porch with a book. The garden was my sanctuary, rows of tomatoes, basil, and the stubborn roses my mother planted the year my father died. I'd water the plants, talk to them like old friends, and sometimes, if the mood struck, I'd sing. Lunch was usually something simple, a sandwich, a bowl of soup, maybe a slice of the lemon pound cake I baked on Sundays. I'd call Marcus once a week, just to check in. Our conversations were brief but warm. He'd ask about the house, the garden, the neighbours. I'd ask about his kids, his job, his latest fishing trip. Evenings were for quiet. I'd light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and listen to the radio. Sometimes I'd pull out the old photo albums, tracing the faces of people I loved and lost. My mother's handwriting curled in the margins, little notes, dates, memories. It wasn't a grand life, but it was mine, steady, familiar, safe. When Tasha moved in, everything shifted. At first it was small things, the sound of her laughter echoing down the hallway, the smell of her expensive shampoo in the bathroom, the way she rearranged the cushions on the couch. She was grateful, or at least she said she was. She cooked dinner some nights, her hands moving deftly as she chopped onions, her voice soft as she told stories about her childhood. We found a rhythm, of sorts. She'd join me in the garden, her nails painted bright red as she pulled weeds. She'd help with the laundry, folding towels with a precision that made me smile. She'd sit with me in the evenings, her feet tucked under her, sipping tea and watching the sun dip below the trees. But there were moments, fleeting but sharp, when I'd catch her watching me, her eyes calculating, her smile just a little too tight. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining things. After all, she was family, she was hurting, she needed me. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed a boundary, a line between what was mine and what was shared. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, just grief. But the house felt different somehow, the air heavier, the shadows longer, and somewhere, deep down, I knew something was coming. It started with the jewellery box. My mother's jewellery box was nothing fancy, just a battered wooden thing with a faded velvet lining and a tiny brass key. But inside were pieces that meant the world to me. Her wedding ring, a string of pearls she wore every Sunday. A silver locket with a picture of my father tucked inside. I kept it on my dresser, right where the morning sun would catch the glint of gold and silver. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after Tasha moved in, I noticed the box was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough that the lid didn't quite sit flush. I frowned, thinking maybe I'd left it that way, distracted by a phone call or a knock at the door. Still, I reached out, closed it gently, and turned the tiny key. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I heard Tasha's voice drifting down the hallway. She was on the phone, her tone hushed, urgent. I couldn't make out the words, just the rise and fall of her voice, the way she laughed, sharp, almost brittle. I paused, toothbrush in hand, listening. The conversation ended abruptly, and I heard her door click shut. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, just grief. But the next morning, as I dressed for a video call, I opened the jewellery box to find my mother's locket missing. The chain was there, coiled like a tiny snake, but the locket itself gone. My heart thudded in my chest. I searched the dresser, the floor, even the laundry basket. Nothing. I tried to remember the last time I'd seen it. Had I worn it recently? Had I moved it? My mind raced, but the memory slipped through my fingers like water. I found Tasha in the kitchen, humming as she poured coffee. She looked up, her eyes bright, her smile easy. "Morning, Leela. Do you want some eggs?" I hesitated, watching her move around the kitchen, her robe cinched tight at the waist, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked so at home, so comfortable. "Have you seen my mother's locket?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She paused, the coffee pot hovering over her mug. "Your mother's locket? No, I haven't. Did you lose it?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Probably just misplaced it. I'll look again later," she shrugged, turning back to the stove. "I'm sure it'll turn up. Things always do." But it didn't. And over the next few days, other small things began to disappear. A silver spoon from the set my grandmother gave me. A silk scarf I wore to my mother's funeral. A pair of pearl earrings, tucked in a dish by the bathroom sink. Each time, I questioned myself. Was I getting forgetful? Was grief making me careless? I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe the world was still safe, that the people I loved were still trustworthy. But the doubt grew, slow and steady, like a crack in the foundation. One evening, as I folded laundry in the living room, I heard Tasha on the phone again. This time, her voice was sharper, her words clipped. "I told you I'm working on it. Just be patient. She doesn't suspect a thing." I froze, a towel clutched in my hands. My heart pounded in my ears. I strained to hear more, but she must have sensed me nearby, because the conversation ended abruptly. She emerged from her room a few minutes later, her face smooth, her smile practiced. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. Nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired. Long day." She reached out, squeezed my shoulder. "You should get some rest. I'll finish up here." I watched her move around the room, her movements efficient. Her eyes never quite meeting mine. I felt a chill run down my spine. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. I thought about my mother, about the way she used to say, her trust, but verify. Or I thought about the will, tucked away in the safe deposit box at the bank, about the way Tasha's eyes lingered on the old documents I kept in my desk. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, just grief. But I started locking my office door too. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. I'd gone to the bank to check on the safe deposit box, something I hadn't done in months. The manager greeted me with a polite smile, led me to the small windowless room where the boxes were kept. My hands shook as I turned the key, the metal cold and unforgiving. Inside, everything looked as I remembered, my mother's will neatly folded. The deed to the house, a stack of old letters tied with a blue ribbon. I checked the will, just to reassure myself. My mother's handwriting curled across the page, steady and sure. Everything divided equally between Marcus and me. No surprises. But as I closed the box, I noticed something odd. A faint, unfamiliar scent, like expensive perfume. The same scent that lingered in the hallway at home. A cold knot formed in my stomach. When I returned home, Tasha was in the garden, her hands buried in the soil, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with the neighbour over the fence. She looked up as I approached, her smile wide, her eyes bright. "Everything okay?" she asked, brushing dirt from her hands. I nodded, forcing a smile. "I just needed to check on a few things at the bank." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're always so careful, Lila. I wish I could be more like you." I shrugged, my heart pounding in my chest. Abeiza, that night I waited until she was asleep. I crept into her room, my heart hammering in my chest. I searched her drawers, her closet, her purse. I found nothing. No locket, no earrings, no scarf. But in the bottom of her suitcase, tucked beneath a pile of clothes, I found a stack of papers, legal documents. My mother's will, photocopied, pages marked with sticky notes and highlighter. And a letter, addressed to a lawyer I didn't recognize. My hand shook as I read the words. Tasha was contesting the will, claiming my mother had promised her a share of the estate, claiming I was unfit to manage the inheritance. I sank to the floor, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I sat there on the floor, the papers trembling in my hands, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I could hear Tasha's soft breathing from the bed, the gentle rise and fall, as if she hadn't a care in the world. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I read the letter again, my eyes catching on the words. "I have reason to believe the will was altered under duress. My late mother-in-law confided in me that she wished for me to have a share of the estate, given my care and support during her final months. Lies, all of it." My mother had been clear, her mind sharp until the very end. She'd never once mentioned Tasha in the will, never hinted at anything other than what was written. I felt a wave of nausea, a hot, prickling anger rising in my chest. I wanted to wake Tasha, to shake her, to demand an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I slipped the papers back where I found them, careful to leave everything as it was. I crept back to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clenched in my lap. Sleep was impossible. My thoughts spun in circles. Memories of my mother, of the quiet dignity with which she'd lived her life, of the trust she'd placed in me. I thought of Marcus, of the way he'd always defended Tasha, always insisted she meant well. I thought of the missing locket, the stolen moments, the way Tasha had wormed her way into my home, my life, my family's legacy. By morning, I felt hollowed out, brittle as old bone. At breakfast, Tasha was all smiles, chattering about the neighbour's new puppy, the tomatoes ripening in the garden. I watched her, searching for any sign of guilt, any crack in the mask. But she was flawless, her performance seamless. I forced myself to eat, the toast dry and tasteless in my mouth. My hands shook as I lifted my coffee cup. Tasha didn't seem to notice. After she left for her morning walk, I called Marcus. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about Tasha." He sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "What now, Lila? She told me you've been acting strange, locking your doors, accusing her of things." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "Marcus, she's trying to contest the will. She's been taking things from the house. I found documents, letters to a lawyer. She's saying Mom promised her part of the estate." There was a long pause. I could hear the faint sound of children playing in the background, the clatter of dishes. "Lila, that doesn't make sense. Tasha wouldn't do that. She's grieving, just like you. Maybe you're reading too much into things." I felt a cold wave of despair. I'm not imagining this, Marcus. I have proof. "Please, just come and see for yourself." He hesitated, then muttered, "I'll see what I can do." When I hung up, I felt more alone than ever. That afternoon, I watched Tasha from the kitchen window as she chatted with the mailman, her laughter bright and easy. I wondered how long she'd been planning this, how many lies she'd told, how many secrets she'd kept. That night, I lay awake, listening to the house settle, the wind whispering through the trees. I thought about my mother, about the lessons she'd tried to teach me, about kindness, about trust, about standing up for what's right. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called the family lawyer, Mrs. Green. She'd known my mother for years, handled all her affairs with a quiet, steady hand. I explained everything: Tasha's sudden move-in, the missing items, the documents I'd found. Mrs. Green listened in silence, her voice calm and measured when she finally spoke. Eli, you need to secure the house. Change the locks if you have to. And bring me those documents. We'll handle this, but you need to protect yourself. I thanked her, my voice trembling with relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. That afternoon, I waited until Tasha left for her yoga class. I gathered the documents from her suitcase, careful not to disturb anything else. I took photos of everything, every page, every note, every letter. I packed the originals in a manila envelope and drove straight to Mrs. Green's office. She met me at the door, her eyes kind but sharp. She read through the documents, her lips pressed into a thin line. This is serious, Lila. She's already filed a claim with the probate court. But with these documents and your testimony, we have a strong case. I'll file an injunction to freeze the estate until this is resolved. I nodded, my hands clenched in my lap. What about the things she's taken? My mother's locket, the jewellery, the silver. Mrs. Green sighed. We'll include that in the report, but for now, focus on protecting yourself. Don't confront her alone. If you feel unsafe, call the police. I left the office feeling both lighter and heavier, relieved to have someone on my side, but burdened by the weight of what was to come. When I returned home, Tasha was in the kitchen, humming as she chopped vegetables. She looked up, her eyes bright. Where have you been? She asked, her tone casual. I forced a smile. Just running errands. She nodded, turning back to the cutting board. Oh, I was thinking we could have pasta tonight. Maybe open a bottle of that red wine your mother liked. I watched her, searching for any sign of guilt, any crack in the mask. But she was flawless, her performance seamless. That night I locked my bedroom door, the key cold and heavy in my hand. I lay awake, listening to the house settle, the wind whispering through the trees. I thought about my mother, about the lessons she tried to teach me, about kindness, about trust, about standing up for what's right. I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The next few days passed in a haze of tension. I moved through the house like a ghost, careful and quiet, always aware of Tasha's presence. She seemed to sense the shift too. Her smiles grew tighter, her questions more pointed. Are you feeling all right, Lila? You seemed distracted. I'd nod, forcing a smile, but inside I was unraveling. Every time I heard her footsteps in the hallway, every time I caught her watching me from the corner of her eye, I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. I started keeping a journal, writing down every strange occurrence, every missing item, every conversation that felt off. Mrs. Green had advised me to document everything, and so I did. Dates, times, details. It gave me a sense of control, a way to anchor myself in the storm. One evening, as I sat in the sunroom, the golden light fading, I heard Tasha on the phone again. This time, her voice was sharper, her words clipped. Her words clipped. I'm handling it. She's not as naive as I thought, but it's too late for her now. The papers are filed. Once the court date is set, there's nothing she can do. I felt a chill run down my spine. I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding, trying to steady my breathing. I wanted to burst in, to confront her, but I held back. I needed more than anger. I needed proof. That night I emailed Mrs. Green everything I'd written in my journal, along with the audio recording I'd managed to capture on my phone. She replied within the hour, "This is exactly what we need. Stay strong, Lila." The truth will come out. The next morning, I called Marcus again. This time, my voice was firmer. Marcus, I need you to come home. Please, I can't do this alone." He hesitated, but something in my tone must have reached him. "All right, I'll be there tomorrow." When I hung up, I felt a wave of relief. For the first time in weeks, I wouldn't be alone. That evening, Tasha was unusually quiet. She picked at her dinner, her eyes darting to me and then away. I wondered if she sensed the walls closing in, if she knew her time was running out. After dinner, I found her in the living room staring at the old family photos on the mantel. She turned as I entered, her expression unreadable. "Alila, do you ever wish things were different?" she asked, her voice soft. I studied her, searching for the woman I thought I knew. Sometimes. But wishing doesn't change what's real. She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That night, I slept with the door locked, my phone on the nightstand, my journal tucked under my pillow. Marcus arrived the next afternoon, his face drawn, his eyes tired. He hugged me tightly, holding on a little longer than usual. "I'm sorry, Leila. I should have listened sooner." We sat at the kitchen table, the afternoon sun slanting through the window, dust motes dancing in the light. I showed him the documents, the journal, the recording. He read everything in silence, his jaw clenched, his hands trembling. When he finished, he looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I can't believe she'd do this. I thought she loved us." I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "People do strange things when they're desperate." We called Mrs. Green together, putting her on speaker. She explained the next steps: the court hearing, the injunction, the police report for the missing items. Marcus listened, nodding, his face set in grim determination. That evening we confronted Tasha together. She was in the garden, her hands buried in the soil, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice steady. She looked up, her eyes wary. "What's going on?" I handed her the envelope with the documents. "We know about the will, the letters, the missing things." For a moment she said nothing. Then her face crumpled and she sank to the ground, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what else to do. After Marcus left, I had nothing. No money, no home. I thought if I could just get a little bit, I could start over. Marcus knelt beside her, his voice gentle but firm. "You could have asked for help. You didn't have to lie. You didn't have to steal." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I was scared. I thought you'd hate me." I knelt beside her, my anger softening into something like pity. "We don't hate you, Tasha, but you have to face the consequences of what you've done." The next day, Mrs. Green filed the police report. The officers came to the house, took statements, catalogued the missing items. Tasha sat on the porch, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Word spread quickly through the family, then the neighborhood. People whispered, some with sympathy, some with judgment. Tasha's friends stopped calling. The neighbors avoided her eyes. But through it all, I tried to hold on to my dignity, to the lessons my mother taught me. I didn't gloat. I didn't seek revenge. I just told the truth and let the world see it for what it was. The days that followed were heavy, the air in the house thick with things unsaid. Tasha moved quietly, her presence shrinking as if she could make herself invisible. She spent most of her time in the guest room, the door closed, the light seeping out from under the crack, late into the night. I heard her crying sometimes, muffled and raw, and though my heart ached, I kept my distance. Marcus stayed for a week, helping me sort through the aftermath. He called the children every night, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it, promising he'd be home soon. We worked side by side, cataloguing what was missing, making lists for the insurance, and meeting with Mrs. Green to prepare for the court hearing. The neighbours, who once waved from their porches and brought over casseroles, now watched us with wary eyes. Some offered quiet support, a loaf of bread left on the doorstep, a gentle squeeze of my hand at the grocery store. Others whispered behind curtains, their voices carrying on the wind. One afternoon, Mrs. Green came by with an update. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands folded neatly, her eyes kind but direct. "The court has frozen the estate, Leila. Tasha's claim won't go anywhere with the evidence we have. The police are still investigating the missing items. But the most important thing is that you're protected now." I nodded, relief and exhaustion washing over me. "Thank you, Mrs. Green. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You did the right thing, Leila. Your mother would be proud." After she left, Marcus and I sat in silence, the weight of everything settling between us. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry, Lila. I should have believed you from the start." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "We all want to believe the best in the people we love. That's not a weakness, Marcus." "That's what makes us family." He nodded, his eyes shining. "I'll talk to Tasha. She needs to leave Leila. She can't stay here anymore." That evening, Marcus sat with Tasha on the porch, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I watched from the kitchen window, my heart heavy. Their voices were low, the words lost to the breeze, but I could see the pain on both their faces. When Marcus came back inside, he looked older, wearier. "She's leaving tomorrow. She said she's sorry for everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. That night I walked through the house, touching the things my mother left behind, the old clock, the rose-patterned teacups, the faded photographs on the mantel. I thought about forgiveness, about how it's not a gift you give to someone else, but a way to set yourself free. The morning Tasha left, the house was quiet. She packed her things in silence, her movements slow and deliberate. She paused in the doorway, her suitcase in hand, and looked at me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Leela, but I am sorry. I lost myself. I let fear and anger turn me into someone I don't recognize. I studied her face, searching for the woman I once called family. I saw the pain, the regret, the longing for something she couldn't name. I hope you find your way, Tasha, I said softly. But you can't do it here. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. A thank you for everything. And then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Marcus left that afternoon, hugging me tightly before he went. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. I promised I would, and watched as his car disappeared down the street, the house growing still once more. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild. I changed the locks, cleaned out the guest room, and planted new roses in the garden. I found my mother's locket at a local pawn shop, the owner sympathetic and quick to return it, once I showed proof it was mine. The other items, some lost forever, became memories, reminders of what I'd survived. I started inviting friends over again, filling the house with laughter and warmth. I joined a book club, took up painting, and spent long afternoons in the garden, my hands in the earth, the sun on my face. Grief lingered, as it always does, but it softened with time, making room for hope. One evening, as I sat on the porch, a gentle breeze stirring the wind chimes, I thought about my mother. I imagined her sitting beside me, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes kind. You did the right thing, Leila, I heard her say in my mind. You stood up for yourself. You protected what matters. You protected what mattered. I smiled, the ache in my chest easing. Life moved forward, slow and steady. The house felt lighter, the shadows less menacing. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to the quiet voice inside that warned me when something was wrong. I forgave Tasha, not because she asked, but because I needed to let go. I forgave Marcus, too, for not believing me right away. And I forgave myself for wanting so badly to believe in family, even when it hurt, till seasons changed, as they always do. Summer faded into autumn, the air crisp and cool, the leaves turning gold and scarlet. I found comfort in the small rituals of daily life, sweeping the porch, baking bread, tending the roses that bloomed stubbornly even as the days grew shorter. Sometimes I'd catch myself listening for Tasha's footsteps in the hallway, or expecting to hear her laughter drifting from the kitchen. The house was quieter now, but it was a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence that had settled over us in those last weeks. And I realized I'd been holding my breath for so long, waiting for the next betrayal, the next loss. Now, I could finally exhale. Marcus called more often. Our conversations grew longer, warmer. He apologized again and again, but I told him it wasn't necessary. We talked about our childhood, about our mother, about the things we missed and the things we hoped for. He promised to visit more, and I believed him. One Saturday, he brought his children to visit. The house filled with the sound of their laughter, their small feet thundering down the hallway, their voices echoing in the garden. I watched them chase butterflies among the roses, their faces bright with joy, and felt something inside me heal. We sat on the porch that evening, the children asleep upstairs, the sky painted with stars. Marcus turned to me, his face serious. I want you to know, Leela, I've learned from this. I won't let anyone come between us again. You're my sister. You always have been, and you always will be. I squeezed his hand, my heart full. We're family, Marcus, that's what matters. He nodded, his eyes shining. I'm proud of you. Mom would be too. After they left, the house felt full, not empty. I realized I wasn't alone. Not really. I had friends, neighbors, memories, and the quiet strength my mother had given me. I started volunteering at the local community center, helping other women who'd been through betrayal and loss. I listened to their stories, offered what comfort I could, and found that in helping others, I was helping myself. One afternoon, as I was leaving the center, I saw Tasha across the street. She looked thinner, older, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. She saw me, hesitated, then offered a small, tentative wave. For a moment, I considered crossing the street, saying something, anything, but I realized there was nothing left to say. We had both moved on in our own ways. I nodded. offering her a gentle smile, and walked away. That night, I sat in the garden, the air cool and fragrant with the scent of roses. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the slow, painful process of healing. I realized I was stronger than I'd ever known, braver than I'd ever believed. I remembered my mother's words, spoken so many years ago. You can't control what others do, Lila. You can only control how you respond. Choose kindness, but don't let anyone mistake it for weakness. I carried those words with me, a shield and a comfort. As the stars blinked overhead, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had learned to trust myself again. And in the quiet of that autumn night, I knew I was finally home.